what are some of the problems that are, impinging on states from the federal level? I know that Vivek Ramaswamy, for example, has called for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to be abolished. And
Mhm.
so are a lot of the issues coming just directly from them? Are there other issues that, Congress has to deal with specifically? What does the federal landscape look like?
Yeah, so there's so to start, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission basically has a monopoly on the regulation of nuclear power throughout the United States. So, well, with the caveat for civilian power, where you're selling it to the grid. So we do have the nuclear navy. We've been using small modular reactors for decades. Inside, people live inside these submarines right
Mhm.
by the reactor. Again, impeccable safety record. Some of the best advocates for nuclear power are, current and former members of the nuclear navy. Um, so the DoD does have the ability to approve nuclear reactors for certain use cases. They're also looking at applications of small modular reactors or even micro reactors, smaller ones, for their own purposes, but they can't sell power generated from those onto the grid because then it becomes NRC's jurisdiction.
Mhm.
Likewise, the Department of Energy can approve demonstration reactors for use, but they also can't sell power, so that eliminate some potential loopholes to build more of the reactors, or to otherwise make it more economical for companies to prototype and build these things directly. For all intents and purposes, you have to get the design approved by the NRC. Currently, there's only one small modular reactor design which has been fully approved. NuScale's Voyager cost them $500 million to get through the process, because NRC is given a budget from Congress, but then they're supposed to recoup um, all that money, or not all of it, like 90%, I think, through fees that are imposed on the applicants. So it's basically like you pay your lawyers to fill out all the documents, and then you pay for their lawyers to review all of them. I think in 2023 it costs $300 an hour to have one of these things reviewed. They're getting faster, allegedly. I listened to an interview with the chair of the NRC that had some, positive movement. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's different things that I would propose that are more moderate fixes. It's kind of unclear like what the pragmatic thing to do is.
Mm.
So maybe it is like if Congress had the will to, which I don't know that it does, but if Congress had the will to do things other than some of the more minor reforms, um, they could create a new agency. This would require Congress. They could create a new agency that is tasked with a different mission, that is less focused on safety. That's just such a core part of not only the mission of NRC but the culture of NRC.
Yeah.
Um, and safety is important because taking care of people is important, but also because if things don't go well, then that can hurt the whole industry moving forward, right? Like if the engineers who were designing the plant at Fukushima had, been more diligent or like acted upon, that vulnerability,
Mhm.
maybe we'd be having a completely different conversation. Maybe I wouldn't be a nuclear researcher at all because like we would have just, you know, we would have just built all the reactors. The cost would have dropped. We wouldn't be, the conversation would look very different, because we were poised to do that before Fukushima, mostly from a kind of like global war on terror, energy independence push,
Right,
people being
right.
like, oh, I don't want to be dependent on, Saudi Arabia for oil or whatever.
Well, which still hasn't gone away as like a geopolitical imperative. Europe, for example, is feeling the pain right now because of the war in the Ukraine and the loss of access to Russian gas. And
Yes.
France is like weathering that better than others because they have such a strong nuclear power program.
And that was the intention behind the program as well. They, unlike the United States, like the French, are not blessed with the same amount of like energy resources. You know, we have so much coal, we have so much natural gas, we have so much oil, you know, there's uranium, you know, like we got it all here. But they don't have that. So they were like, we can't be dependent on this. We need to create a more robust system. We should go in on nuclear. And the thing that's, you know, and that's something that I really think is another positive for nuclear, is that you could just have a strategic uranium reserve. You know, you could just stockpile a bunch of this and be like, oh, we have 2 years worth of power or whatever if our supply was ever disrupted. It's there are stockpiles of it. They're just like underground, you know, so it's just about like, it's like this fundamentally the same thing. So yeah, I mean, so the geopolitical um question, like, I mean, I think it makes the case stronger. We should pursue a similar thing. We don't have to do the Texas pivot yet, but I think that there's, like, for example, with I'll at least do a little foreshadowing. You know, with you know, like Germany very much needs natural gas. The UK, a bunch of these, you know, and they can't get enough of it because they don't have their own like robust, like giga scaled fracking industry like we do in the US, because they were just using Russian gas. I mean, not just Russian gas, but a lot of Russian gas. Um, you know, so part of my pitch is like, okay, we should be building the natural gas export terminals, and we should be substituting our natural gas needs for our own you know, power generation with nuclear reactors, and then we should just be exporting so much natural gas to the whole rest of the world and just making hand over fist. I mean, there are maybe like the risks of becoming like too prosperous from like energy exports. Like
Yeah, yeah,
that does have
right.
its own like issues or whatever. And I don't know as much about those. But in the first order, I'm like, let's do that. Let's just, you know, like how bountiful could Texas be? Um